I can remember when I was little and I would run to my parents' room in the night. And if I had a bad dream, I would go to my mom's side. And then she'd walk me back to my room and she would say, "Tell me your dream." And so I remember I told my mom once I had a dream I was a muffler. And she said, "That's exhausting." This is dad jokes meets Mother's Day. I told my mom I dreamed I was a superhero, and she said, "Great, you can start by rescuing your room." I dreamed I was rich, and I bought my mom a mansion, and she said, "Wonderful, now wake up and start saving." And I dreamed I invented a machine that does chores, and my mom said, "So did I, it was you." Just kidding. But I did have lots of dreams about wolves and witches and chases, or I'm naked at school, I'm afraid, I'm confused. And my mother would say to me, "Let's go back into your dream with Jesus. Where is Jesus? Can you see him? Can you hear him? What is he doing?" Today's story is about dreams, and Joseph will say the words, "Tell me your dream." And our job will be to ask the question, where is Jesus in this story? We're in a series called Joseph and Judah, and the subtitle is See What God Can Do. And the family's kind of fallen apart. The nation idea is kind of, the dream of a nation is failing. Father Israel's inconsolable. Judah's run away to live with the Canaanites, and the brothers, the rest of them, live steeped in their shame. And Joseph has gone from slave to sex object to convict, unjustly imprisoned. He keeps trying to do the right thing, and it just doesn't work out for him. Every time something good happens, it ends with something bad, until finally a breakthrough. Today is the story, chapter 40 of Genesis. Let's read it together. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard, if you remember that's Potiphar, assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials, who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, "In my dream, I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand." "This is what it means," Joseph said to him. "The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I've done nothing to deserve being put into a dungeon." When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, me too. I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." This is what it means, Joseph said. "The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh." And the chief baker was sad that he'd asked Joseph for an interpretation. That was my addition. Now the third day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he had a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he impaled the chief baker just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. This is God's word. Even in your greatest disappointment, God is still working. Even in your greatest disappointment, God is still working. Many years ago, we were getting ready for a summer trip. We'd planned this big family holiday. And while I was doing that, I checked my email, and I got an email from Russ at Camp Quanos. I had spoken there for a number of years already, and Camp Quanos, when you speak there, is a big job. Lots and lots of talks you're doing different, and lots of kids, and there's discussion questions. You got, it's a big thing. 450 kids, 250 adults, it's a big deal. And so I checked this email from Russ, and it said, do you have your discussion questions ready? And usually you get that email a couple days before you're gonna speak at camp. And I suddenly felt sick to my stomach and started panicking because I thought my week was later in the summer. And so I went back through all of our communication, and I realized that sure enough, we had miscommunicated, and it was my fault. And I was going on family holiday. And so I had to call them and say, I can't come. And so I just left them in the lurch. And I felt so terrible. I felt sick to my stomach. For years, I felt ashamed. Every time I think about it, I'd be like, oh, that was such a big failure. It's so terrible. And then one day I ended up running into, I was at a pastor's thing, and this guy ran up to me, and a pastor ran up to me, and he said, are you Jonathan Headley? And I said, yeah. And he said, oh, I wanted to meet you. And I said, really? And then he said, yeah, you're the reason I ended up in pastoral ministry. And I was like, really? I don't know you. How is that possible? And he said, do you remember when you didn't go to Camp Quanos when you were supposed to, and you didn't speak at the camp? And I was like, oh, wow, that got out, did it? Okay. Glad I'm famous for that. Okay. Yes, I remember, because I feel ashamed every time I think about it. And he said, do you know what's funny is I was a camp counselor that summer, and I happened to be standing next to the camp director when they told him that you weren't going to come. And he was panicking, the other people were panicking, and he said, in that moment, I stepped in and I said, I'll do it. And they were like, you'll do it? Can you even do that? And he's like, I can do it. I think I can do it. And they were so desperate, they got this kid to be the camp speaker. And he did a great job. And actually, he said, that's how I ended up on this track to pursue ministry. And now he works in a different field, but serving the kingdom. He speaks publicly a lot. Maybe you've had that moment where you were just in the right place at the right time, and something happened, and you feel it when it happens. Oh, this is it. This is a moment. This is one of those things. Like, what are you guys talking about? Why are you depressed? Tell me your dream. The right place at the right time. I call it the end of the liminal space. Liminal is this word that means the space in between. We've all been there or felt it at some point, that being between the promise and the fulfillment, like Sarah's barren womb, or Moses tending the sheep, or Ruth gleaning leftovers, or David in the cave, or Esther before the beauty pageant, or Jesus for 30 years waiting. 2 on the road to Emmaus, or the fishermen casting their nets in grief. And often we feel like we're languishing, we're waiting for what? For this moment, for something to happen. The moment something happens, the cupbearer and the baker are suddenly imprisoned, and they have these dreams, and they're depressed, visibly depressed. And there's this moment of power that happens as Joseph is able to step into it. This word offended, the two of them end up there because they've offended Pharaoh. And the word is to sin against. They've sinned against Pharaoh. So whatever that means, it could be a conspiracy or a rebellion, or someone watered down the wine, or someone baked the cookies with salt, or there's food poisoning, or they just said the wrong thing. Whatever happens to cross the line for Pharaoh, and then they're imprisoned deservingly into the same prison that Joseph is in. And this moment will find you. Sometimes this is a hard truth to reconcile, is that the moment will find you exactly where you are. You know, these two guys, they both have a dream on the same night, and they both look depressed, and the word is like sick or emaciated. They're like visibly concerned. And Joseph is there in the moment, at the right place, at the right time, because God has ordained it. His situation doesn't have to change for God to move. Now, this is hard because I tend toward annoyance in the waiting. I'm anxious in the liminal spaces. I chafe and I push and I force and I resist and I resent. But God is faithful to find you where you are in the moment you need to be. And there's a breakthrough. There is a breakthrough in this story. I remember, I've told you the story about meeting Lauren, and that was the moment. Oh, punch in the stomach. She's so beautiful. Oh, the angels sang, remember? Some of you remember, okay? And I turned to my friend and we walked away and I said, why aren't you dating this girl? It was his girl, you know? And I was like, wow, what? She's so beautiful. And he was like, I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't click. You know, I don't know. And I was like, okay, you're an idiot. And we walked away and I didn't think about her again because really she was his potential, girl. And so a few weeks after that, I woke up in the night and I had a dream. And the dream was I was standing in line for textbooks at the school university store. And I turned around and this girl was behind me. And I woke up immediately and I thought, whoa, that's weird. Why is that girl in my dream? That's strange. And then I went back to sleep and then I had another dream. And in that dream, I was walked up to a door with my sister and the door opened and Lauren was standing there again, this girl. And I woke up again immediately and I thought, oh, wow, this is creepy now. Why am I having these dreams with this girl? And so I started praying. And for months I was praying. I eventually shared with my friend and I prayed and prayed. And I didn't tell Lauren for a really, really, really long time because it's kind of weird, right? This is how it is, right? And God has spoken to me a number of times in dreams when we were church planting and we were really wrestling. I was really wrestling. And this woman came up to me and she said, I had a dream, very vivid dream, where you left your house, you sold your house that you love so much, and you moved into a new house, a different house that God gave you. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is crazy. Or the other week I shared a dream about Garth and about him getting up and saying this, oh Lord, we don't know what to do. And he told me a number of people came and talked to him, and in his head he was thinking but this is John's dream. I didn't really do that. And I'm like, yeah, but you could have, because we all can picture it, right? And this is the thing, dreams are a weird thing. We write them off because they seem weird or they have weird elements to them. But the ancient world didn't. They believed and considered that this was one way that God could speak to you, was in your dreams. Joseph has dreams, the officials have dreams, and Pharaoh has dreams. And all of them think of those dreams as being significant. Now, Joseph interprets the dreams. There's a thing in the ancient world called onermancy. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Onermancy. You can make up the pronunciation if you want. It's the science and practice of interpreting dreams. And it flourished in ancient Egypt because they believed dreams were a way that you could prepare for what's coming down the pipe at you. Both Egypt and Babylon created these professional people. So we know them as magi or wise men in Babylon, but this is the role. And these were these trained specialists, and usually they would use a book called a dream book, and they found these dream books. So from Egypt and Mesopotamia, and the dream books explain whether a particular thing in your dream is a positive thing or a negative thing, or maybe some of the different things, what they could represent. And so these trained specialists would go and use these books to figure out what the dream meant, because they believed that although the gods would give you a dream, they wouldn't give you the interpretation necessarily. You had to work that out on your own. One of these books is at the British Museum, and Joseph is like 500 years older than this book they found. So not that he's reading books in prison probably, but we know Joseph, he just walked into the moment and God gave him this interpretation. God shows him. So if Abraham's a prophet, Joseph is a wise man, like Daniel given this gift. And I think if I had one of these dreams seem a bit weird to me, I maybe would think it was pizza. Maybe I would think it's significant. I don't know. But the cupbearer, he gets a good interpretation. Joseph says, Pharaoh will lift up your head. And that's an idiomatic expression that means you'll be restored. Like when God lifts our heads, he's restoring us to favor. He's restoring us to this place of grace and goodness. So this is a good interpretation for this guy. And then Joseph, seeing the moment, he asks that he would be remembered. Now in Hebrew, it's like you say it like it's already happened. So instead of saying, please remember me, you'd actually say, thanks for remembering me. And he says this, and then he says, deal with me with kindness. And then he says it again, remember me. And he goes into the story a little bit with this guy, hoping that the guy is going to, this is his breakthrough moment. The guy's going to go in and get him out somehow. And then we see the baker hearing the good report. Me too, tell me my dream. And then he gets it's the same expression actually. Pharaoh will lift up your head off your body, actually. So it's like, oh wow, that's totally the opposite. That's not a good one. And we know from study that the Egyptians, if they left a body out exposed to the birds, it was because they believed that would mean that it would prevent your spirit from rest in the afterlife if the birds are there. So if you picture like Pharaoh in his pyramid with all his stuff when he's dead, is like that's so that he can have a good afterlife. If you're hanging up for the birds, that's like the very opposite. Like we really did not like your scones. And he's dead. He's killed that way. If he was depressed, he's really depressed now, right? He's got this bad trajectory. And maybe we're asking like, why these dreams? These seem a bit weird. They're like just kind of out of nowhere. Why the dreams? And the first reason is they set up Joseph's credentials. So if you picture the very next story, which we know and can look at, is that he's going to go and interpret dreams for Pharaoh. And why would he get invited to do that if he's got no CV, he's got no portfolio, he's got no proof that he's a dream interpreter? There's no true interpreter. He needs something. And so this is what establishes him as the one who can come and speak in a trusted way to Pharaoh. And the second thing it does is it establishes Joseph's connection with Yahweh. We can see, although Joseph never says, thus saith the Lord, he does say interpretation comes from Yahweh. And then in the moment, he immediately gives this interpretation. And so we see prophetic moments are meant to lead us to God, not to the pursuit of the gift. And in Deuteronomy, in the law, it says, if a prophet or one who foretells by dreams appears among you and announces to you a sign or wonder, and if the sign and wonder spoken of takes place, and the prophet says, let us follow other gods you have not known, and let us worship them, you must not listen to the words of that prophet or dreamer. The Lord your God is testing you to find out whether you love him with all your heart and with all your soul. This is the guide. The gift is not the thing, God is the thing. I grew up in a church a charismatic church where there's a lot of people trying to hear and listen to what God is saying and then share that with other people. And so lots of people practicing that and learning how to do it. And so there were a couple rules or guidelines that were established in our church. One was no dates and the other was no mates. And that was kind of when you're hearing from God, if you get a date for someone like, oh, I think this is going to happen on this day, don't say it. Or if you're praying and you're like, oh, I think those two are going to get together. I think God is putting those people together. Don't say it to them. And the reason is because if it's true, it would be epically awesome for you. But if it's not, if it doesn't happen, it is extremely painful for those people to go through that. And so these are the kind of guidelines that we apply as we try to listen and hear what God is saying. We discern, how is God speaking to us? And if it isn't encouraging and uplifting when you're sharing it for someone, then maybe sit on it for a while. Maybe talk about it with a leader or something and be like, should I share this? Is this a thing I'm supposed to do? And lastly, I would say, most of the time your dream is for you. So when I told that dream to Garth, it wasn't so that Garth would start praying. It was actually for me, and it was an encouragement to my heart that God was speaking. If the pursuit or the revelation doesn't lead us to love Jesus more, then we should leave it behind, because that's what we're about. That's what we're on about. And we see a story with disappointment. So I told you, I met Lauren, and then I was praying, and I had these dreams, and I was like, oh, what does this mean? And so eventually, after a few months, I thought, I want to see if there's anything here. And I kept trying to be around where Lauren would be. I thought, oh, maybe she'll be at the cafeteria, and I go to the cafeteria and I miss her, and go to the gym. We never lined up for me to just run into her on campus. And so finally I said, I just have to call her, I guess. And so I called her and I said, can you come downstairs? I want to ask you a question. And we were in dorms. And so she said to her dorm mates, oh, I think this guy's going to ask me on a date. Just pray I'm going to say no clearly to him. And so she went downstairs, and then I asked her in the most awkward way possible. I said, do you want to go for a run with me or go for coffee? And she was like, what? Who would ask for a run on a first date? This is so weird. So she's like, oh, I guess we could go for coffee. And then she went inside and was like, oh no, I was going to say no. And then I picked her up for the date, and we walked to my car. It was this old brown Monza, and I had a song. And so I said, do you want to hear my brown car song? And she said, okay. And then I sang her the song. And then, because my friends and I always sang it in a round, I said, do you want to sing it with me? And she said, no. But she thought in her head, I don't know if I could ever be with a guy who's this free on a first date. And then we drove and we started talking about our time with YWAM and our love for the Lord and our passion for missions and for what God could do in our lives and what he'd done. And it was so good. We had this incredible time together. And I was thinking like, wow, this is the kind of girl I could marry. She's so beautiful, attractive inside and out, and she loves the Lord with all her heart. And then what happened next is a matter of Headley family lore. Lauren would say for years that it was 2 weeks. I would say 11 days. But I didn't call. And I didn't call even at the 11-day mark. It was actually that we ran into each other at a school event, a function, and she'll say it was very awkward. And I say, I don't think it was that awkward. This is the experience. Like, things went so well, and then nothing. This is what Joseph experiences. Like, from elation to disappointment. He's correct about both dreams. It happens exactly as he says. Both men are lifted up. Just, we have two meanings now for the word: reinstate and decapitate. And both interpretations come to pass in 3 days. This would be so encouraging when the guards come to collect them after 3 days. You'd be like, yes, okay. Like, this is it. And then nothing. And this is really a theme in Joseph's life. Like, he starts out, he's the favored son, and a clear line to succession. The blessing is surely going to come to him. He's got his father's coat and his father's attention, and then he's sold into slavery. And then he's a faithful servant. He does well. He's blessed. His master is blessed. He's given responsibility and position, and then he's falsely accused and imprisoned. And then he's a good prisoner. He's trusted and favored, and the warden loves him, and he knows the interpretations in the right moment. He has a way out, and then the cupbearer forgets him. Like, I can't decide if he's blessed or if he's cursed. Is he lucky or unlucky? Like, are things working out for him or not? It's hard to tell. I keep trying to imagine I'm Joseph, and the guy I just impressed is the king's cupbearer. He's the confidant of the king. He stands next to the king all day long and they chat, and he brings the king his cup every time he's thirsty. Here you go. Like, surely there will be a moment where he's like, oh yeah, hey, remember, yeah, I was in jail, remember that? I don't want to bring it up, but like, hey, yeah, this guy Joe, he's so cool. He can interpret dreams. You got to meet him. We got to get him out. Surely that's going to happen one of those days. What would it feel like to think the wait is finally over, and then a few days go by, and then a week, and then 50 weeks? That's 1 year. And then 365 more days of mornings and lunchtimes and evenings where nothing happens. Like, you would get this if I paused this sermon today and we picked it up in 2 years. Then you would feel it. You would be like, oh, 2 years is a long time. Or if I ask you, what were you doing 2 years ago? And you think about it, like, that's a long time ago. So what do we do with this kind of disappointment? Human error. He forgets Joseph. He ruined the plan. He forgot. Why would God let this happen? So the question comes, what's your disappointment theology? What do you believe about all of this, these experiences? Because this is a repeated scriptural reality. It happens over and over and over. Remember the story where Elijah's up on Mount Carmel? He's the prophet and he's challenged. The 450 prophets of Baal, whose God will answer with fire? And they try and nothing happens. And then Elijah prays this simple prayer, and fire comes down from heaven, consumes the bull, consumes the stones, and the wood, everything, till there's a crater. And then everyone's like, yeah, Yahweh is the living God. And then Elijah says, I can smell rain coming. And then everyone's like, what? It hasn't rained in 3 years? And he's like, it's coming. And they're like, no, there's not even a cloud in the sky. And he's like, go look again. And they're like, no, go look again. And he does it 7 times till the guy's like, finally, okay. And there's a little tiny cloud in the sky. And then the guy's like, there's a tiny cloud. He's like, yes, the rain is coming. And then the rain starts to pour, and Elijah starts running, and Ahab's in the chariot, and Elijah outruns the chariot on the way back to the city. Epic Bible moment. Do you know what happens right after that? Jezebel finds out the queen, and she threatens his life, and he runs away to hide, wishes he were dead, not victorious at all. Or David, who gets anointed to be king. They have to even go bring him in from the field. He's chosen specially. The oil runs down his head and his robe. And Samuel says the words, you will be king. The greatest king, the throne that never ends, is David's throne. Do you know what happens right after that? The current king brings him in to be his worship monkey. And every time he's feeling sad, David, play me a song. David, play me a song. Play me another song. David plays the songs. And then the king says, I like you so much, you can be my armor bearer. You can get me dressed, David. So he serves the king and serves the king. He does it so well that eventually the king gets jealous and then wants to kill him and chases him around in caves for years. Or the story of Paul, he's on a missions trip and he gets a dream, a vision. They should change direction and go to Macedonia. That's where God's calling us to go. Yes, okay, let's change the missions trip. And they all go to Macedonia. What happens then? He gets severely flogged in the first town he goes to and put into stocks in prison. Or later he's going on a ship, they're bringing him to Rome, and the ship's captain says, should we go on or should we wait? And Paul says, the Lord, I've heard from the Lord, we should not go on, we should wait. The ship will be shipwrecked. And the captain says, I don't care what you say, we're going. And he goes anyway, and they get in a shipwreck. with Paul the apostle. Like, what do we do with this? The moment you think the breakthrough is here, and then nothing. Someone ruins the plan, or there's human mistakes, or someone forgets, and you suffer. We don't hear what Joseph is thinking here in this story. We don't know if he got depressed maybe on day 36 or day 82 or day 728. We don't know if he railed at God or withdrew. I like to think he trusted, because he's a Hebrews 11 person. He's in the list of people who trusted. This is the mark of Hebrews 11 people, is they just keep hoping. It says some of them die, and they just keep hoping, and some of them die horribly. And they just keep hoping, just keep trusting, clinging foolishly to this promise, it seems. It's funny, Joseph is mentioned in that line, in Hebrews 11, this line of all these different people. And you'd think that because it's the biggest, longest narrative, continuous narrative in Genesis, and one of the longest in the whole Bible, that Joseph would get more than one little line, but that's all he gets. And I would think that the mention of why he's such a great faith person would be something about how he's everyone's favorite guy, or that he saved everyone in the known world from certain death by starvation. That seems like a big deal to me. But if you read that line, it's about one moment at the end of his life. He's lived in Egypt. He's had a good life by the end. He's got 3 generations of kids. He's bounced on his knee. And he's on his deathbed, and he calls everyone to come close. And then he whispers this: "This is not my country. And when the deliverer comes, dig up my bones and bring me home." That's what he's focused on. That's the promise he's clinging to. Not that he'll have a great life or that he'll be protected from a bad one, but that God would be with him and the promise would come. So even in your greatest disappointment, God is still working. It's easy to get caught up in the moment. Something breaks and God is at work, and you were in the right place and it was the right time, and you feel it. Something's happening. And like Joseph, we have these breakthrough moments when we shine or we see what God is doing, and we might even think we know what's going to happen next. It doesn't say this anywhere in the story, but I feel like this story might be the hardest part of Joseph's life. That hope, and then slowly, day by day, the disappointment that could creep in. For many of us, the doubts or the struggle or even the despair. But Joseph seems to live with this steadiness it's not circumstantial. And it seems almost like he's made his home on the bedrock of knowing and trusting Yahweh, who's with him all the time. And so this becomes our prayer too, in the midst of our lives and our stories, that we could say with Joseph, "This is not my country. And if I die before the deliverer comes back, dig up my bones and bring me home, because that's what I'm focused on." Would you pray with me? Jesus, we thank you that you are here in the midst of this story, and you're in the midst of our story. And if we could lift our heads a bit, we'd see that it's your story. This incredible way that you work in the midst of everything to bring redemption, to work things for our good, even when we can't see it. Jesus, I thank you for these stories of people who despite the ups and downs, which are very similar to our ups and downs, trusted you. They trusted you, and they fixed their gaze on something bigger that you were doing. your faithfulness to keep your promise and to redeem us, to make a way and a place for us. We thank you. Thank you for your presence with us. Amen.